to order of the City of Monona Plan Commission, Monday, April 22nd. Please call the roll.
Chair Moore.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Mr. Chapman.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Ms. Fallett.
Here.
Mr. Grice.
Here.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to approval of minutes of April 8th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 8th?
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any changes, corrections, additions? No? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. I think we're going to stick with the order of business this evening. And we'll go to the appearance section. Is there anyone here who is here to speak, either on Zoom or here in the chamber, on anything that is not on the agenda this evening for a public hearing or pre-hearing? Anything that is not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, close the appearance section. There is no unfinished business. We'll move to number 7A. Public hearing on the request by Kitty 111 LLC, DBA Blue Eye Smoke and Vape for approval of a zoning permit for new use at 5007 Monona Drive, case number 2-007-2024. This is the opportunity for the applicant to come forward here, if you would. Introduce yourself to us first and then share anything about this that you'd like to share with us about this. Welcome. Go ahead and tell us who you are,
Yeah.
and then after that, share anything you'd like about your particular application.
Sure. So my name is Nishan,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the manager who opened the small business. So it's gonna be like a small operator business.
Mhm.
It's gonna be like gonna be open like 9 to maybe 8 somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday would be the close. And yeah, I'm just trying to pursue about the new business.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any questions regarding on that, I can explain.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak on this particular, this is a public hearing, so this is an opportunity to speak on this particular applicant. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion, move to number 7B, considerate.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We do have
Oh,
one
sorry.
person on Zoom.
Sorry about that. Mary Trotter, I know you have your hand
Hi.
up. Please feel free to speak.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Okay, great. I was calling because I was very interested in this business because it's a vape shop. And I'm wondering if that is changing that particular location from potential residential to business. And also I'm wondering about a vape shop that close to two high schools.
Right.
So these are information questions. I'm not claiming any point of view on this. I just like more information, please.
Okay, thank you. I suspect we'll be asking or those questions or answering those questions when we get to the consideration of action. But I thank you for raising those questions. With that, we'll move to number 7B, consideration of action on the request by Ketty 111 LLC, DBA Blue I Smoke and Vape for approval of a zoning permit for a new use at 5007 Monona Drive, case number 2-007-2024. Doug?
Thank you. So the zoning permit request here is for a new store, new retail business to be located at 5007 Monona Drive. The store would include tobacco, CBD, and vape products, and is in a currently vacant space. The property is located within the retail business zoning district. It's been vacant for over 6 months and subsequently requires the zoning permit, and the Plan Commission reviews zoning permits in that district. The property is located along the Monona Drive corridor, and the urban design guidelines do apply for that, and are referenced as well during this report. As far as the zoning and land use, the comprehensive plan lists this as commercial use in both the current and the future land use maps, which the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission defines that as land used for retail, service, commercial, and other office uses, and that definition is taken straight from the comprehensive plan. Just of note, there are similar specialized tobacco, vape, and CBD stores further south on Monona Drive, as well as the corner of East Broadway and Monona Drive, as most recently approved as well over at Southtown Mall on West Broadway. As mentioned during the public hearing, the building does include a residential component above. My understanding is that is not to change, and that this would be retail on the ground floor with residential above, and that's not considered, the residential component is not changing, is not considered as part of this. Additionally, there is a separate commercial use in the rear of the building that faces Gordon Avenue. There are no building modifications planned as part of this zoning permit request. I will just note as part of this that in conversation with the police chief that he did ask for clear visibility into the store, limited window screening, and effective interior lighting, just to address any concerns, and I'll get onto those in a minute. As far as parking, staff does have concerns regarding the availability of on-site parking, given the existing and the proposed uses. There's a zoning permit from 2011, permit number 2004, 2011, that approved the use for the majority of this building, really the rear 2/3, that commercial space fronting Gordon Avenue, and that was to transform POS and also permitted the residential uses above. 2 residential uses, including the one above this storefront on Monona Drive. As part of that zoning permit, it did limit the number of stalls that could be associated with this space under the review. There was no use that came through at that time. It was left vacant. But condition number 6 of the approved zoning permit states that since no specific tenant or use had been proposed, submitted for the front third of the building along Monona Drive, and it will be limited by 2 parking stalls available, any new use of business for this space shall require zoning permit approval. Additionally, the residential unit above does have 2 bedrooms. The lease that the applicant shared with me as approval and sort of consent for coming through this evening does include information that shared parking is permitted between the 2 uses, between the residence as well as the commercial use. Additionally, the city standards in the zoning code do regulate retail stores and service uses. They require 1 parking stall for every 300 square feet of gross floor area. The space is just under 1,450 square feet, and so it would necessitate 5 stalls. During the site visit, it appears there are 3 parking stalls, including 1 handicap stall facing south at the front of the property, accessible off of the drive. There may be 1 sort of in front of the residential unit there, closest to Fairway Glen, but with the faded striping, that's unconfirmed at this point. The Commission recommended to discuss the challenges posed between the commercial and residential uses, given the intensity of this specific use. Approximately 50 to 60 customers are predicted during about the 12-hour operating period. It is recommended that the stalls be restriped in a reasonable time frame, and the Commission also consider adjacent customer parking that may be available on some of the side streets, of course not on Monona Drive, but if there's opportunity for staff to park elsewhere, maybe on some of the open street parking, for example, just to retain these parking stalls available for customers. Should the Commission deem this sufficient, a suggested condition is included that if parking becomes an issue, the applicant may need to return for further review. Landscaping, no changes are proposed to that at this time. There is minimal landscaping at the moment, although it was noted that some maintenance could do with some maintenance as well. It's recommended for some additional landscaping along Monona Drive to adhere to the urban design guidelines, as well as maybe softening the entryway. There is sort of a planting bed right there just to the side of the door. The applicant mentioned during the public hearing section, hours typically 9 a.m. to I think 8 p.m. was mentioned, with Sunday closed possibly. That does differ than what we had seen in the application materials. Typically the materials said 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to about 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. depending on the day. There is a signage application that's coming through, scheduled to be considered after this item. for a new wall sign as well. And just to call out the staff comment, the police chief did submit a memo on behalf of the police department. That's included in the materials with the packet. Proximity to the high school was mentioned, which is approximately 0.5 of a mile, half a mile from Monona Grove High School, as well as the sale of vape, nicotine, and tobacco products to underage individuals. With that, the staff recommendation is discussion of the item. If the commission chooses to approve, suggested conditions of approval are included in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. As always, I appreciate it. Should we start down with this end tonight?
So I don't think the business is still there, the one that was on the corner of Dean, that was at the bottom of the jeweler's building. They had a CBD business there. For me, I feel like there's already enough other businesses in the area that this doesn't make sense to me. And I would share the concern about the adjacency to the high schools. So I don't think that I would support this as the intended use.
Anything else?
Nope.
So I have some concerns about parking. There's not enough parking. How many employees is this business going to have? That's a question for
It's
you.
gonna be one.
Just one employee, all day, every day,
Yeah, all day,
From
maybe half and half.
12 hours a day?
It's gonna be 12, but like suppose if somebody couldn't do that, 12 hours, so it's gonna be half and half, like 6
Okay.
hours, 6 hours.
And then with 60, 65 customers a day, and there's 3 parking spots, plus the proximity to the high school, plus, we have, I don't think that I can support this.
John?
I think my issues are contained to the parking issues that
Right.
aren't meeting city requirements.
So, like, the landlords, he said, we can use the building, the parking plot. He has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can also use that spot as a parking place.
Do you have that in writing?
So, sorry, what was it?
Has he written that to you?
Oh, written?
Yeah.
Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, yeah, I can bring to you if you want.
Which
I didn't know about that.
What's that?
So can you clarify that? I mean,
Clarify where,
yeah,
Is that the building to the south?
Next to it, and next to the left side, it's gonna be like apartments, and the right side is the building.
I think it's referred to.
is it it's not Fairway Glen, the thing is there.
So Fairway Glen is to the north, and then
Right,
I
empty building.
believe it's to the south, the vacant property to the south.
So, yeah, that's vacant, that's not.
And that's currently for sale.
For sale.
So I believe like this one's.
That one? Okay, so it is the
yeah, he was referring to the other building that's on the other side of this building.
Right.
And
5011.
right, 5011, and, right, and just because it's vacant doesn't mean that you can automatically use the parking spaces, is what we're trying to get
Okay.
to here.
Right.
So yeah, that's what he said. I can if we have more than a couple of 6, 7 at a time, then you
Right.
can use that one.
Right.
As a parking.
As far as the school issue, I'm not sure it's a plan commission issue.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't know how we can comment on that.
Right.
Okay.
Great, so, Rob?
My concerns were mostly about the parking as well. It seems a little gray in what's available and who has availability, and if that's in writing or if it's an official agreement. Yeah, I respect the chief's comments, but I feel like Quick Trip is a bigger server to the high school than a new vape store, but, yeah, I tend to agree with John. Yeah, I just don't see how it works with the parking, frankly. if there's residents too, and they have visitors, and there's a shared parking agreement with them, I could see that getting complicated very quickly.
Right.
That's all.
Anything else? Susan?
Yeah, that would be my main concern, because we're assuming something will be in that building next door at some point, and then there goes your parking agreement, even if there is one, but yeah, I would minimally need to see it in writing. Well, I respect the chief's comments also, and the concerns raised about proximity to high school. I think that was my thought too, that the Quick Trip is probably more likely where they go, and I guess I was more concerned that we already have 3 in
Mhm.
such close proximity. It
Yeah.
does seem redundant to have another full vape shop, but really, the parking's kind of the main thing, and when you have residences and they're guaranteed 2 stalls at all times, that really limits you to
Right.
not
I
much.
have to make sure with the back side. I haven't noticed it about. I didn't know that mostly it's gonna be parking something. It's gonna be
Yeah.
main issue. So I didn't know about that. So I'm gonna ask them if he's the back sides. I haven't checked out the back sides. So that could be also the parking available. So I just want to make sure, that's it, and then I will put effort on it.
Yeah, I think just because there's nothing on the drive, we'd have to have some kind of assurance about that
Right.
piece.
Right.
That'd be my main concern, really.
Right. I think in the absence of having something in some agreement in writing,
Right.
you know, whether it's
Sure.
the backside or the
Right.
building next door or whatever, in
Right,
the
right.
absence of having something like that, it's definitely tougher. Corey?
Similar concerns. So I was looking at the letter, and it references the mailing address in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. I
Yes.
don't know, that's.
Alcohol.
Oh,
Yeah, next to the Lake Geneva.
okay. So that's just the LLC's address.
That's
Oh,
LHC
okay.
address
All right.
initially,
I wasn't sure if there was a
because
store
before.
there
yeah.
as well, and I had a question. I was
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
ask
sure.
you if there was, but never mind. So I guess I'm not sure, you know, I was reading through, like, here are the needs, the use within the district shall, you know, and that's on the front page here. We've got different things we have to consider, and one of them is to protect and enhance the character of the surrounding neighborhood, to not be unnecessarily duplicative, not create negative impacts to adjacent residential uses when considering parking, service areas, lighting, landscape, and noise. And I went to look at it, and the concern that I had a parking concern, but you have to U-turn to get into, like, if you're going north on Monona Drive, you can't just left turn into the business. So somebody who's going north that wants to go there would have to U-turn into it and then into this small
Yeah,
lot.
initially, yes.
And then I got into the lot, and there was a big truck there, and I was in a small car, but once I pulled into a parking spot, it was hard to back out, so I am worried that there would be a challenge safely getting into that parking lot if they're U-turning and then pulling in and then backing out, and there just wasn't a lot of space, especially if that's where the residence is going in as well, because that's where the door for the apartment is. And if you have 50 to 60 people coming, and it's open for, it was 12 hours, but now you're saying it might be even fewer, you're gonna have, even if everyone's coming spaced out over the time, 4 to 5 people
Yeah.
per hour, and there's just not enough parking, so I went around back, and I couldn't even get in the back lot. There was so many cars back there, there was so many people, there was a lot of parking on the street that was already full from all the other
Right.
apartments back there. There just was nowhere that
No,
anyone
that's
could have
true.
gone.
I mean, I can also agree with that, the parking, so let's suppose. I just want to make sure the backside. If they do have it, the backside's good enough, so.
Yeah, I mean, I
probably-
guess that's a possibility,
maybe-
but then if that business comes to us for a zoning permit, they're gonna wanna use their parking, and then you're gonna be without.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that you are gonna wanna consider, is if this is really where you will have the most success with your business.
Sure,
And thinking about the customers who are gonna wanna come
yeah,
to visit.
yeah,
And
no,
I just don't
I-
think the access is very
Easily, I would say.
easy for anybody.
For like more than, a couple of
Right.
like three, 4, like they have, like reverse it and go that way and exit it. But let's suppose more than like 3 or 4, that could be concern, that where he has to park.
But there wasn't even walking access between the two
Yes.
parking lots either, so they'd be walking over, like, there wasn't like a sidewalk and there wasn't anything around the building, so even if somebody parked back on Gordon, which was in the staff report,
Right.
how would they get to the front? They'd have to walk around the block to get to the front door. I guess I'm just saying, if you want this to be a place that's easy for your customers to come,
Right, right. No, I
This is-
agree.
I don't know that this is gonna work,
Right.
so
So I
those
just
are my
want,
concerns.
sure.
All right, thank you. Chris?
I think it's an unnecessary duplication of services. In the last year or two, we've approved 3 smoke and vape shops.
Yeah.
I think we have, I don't think that's I think it hits right in the core of unnecessary duplication, and I don't think there's enough parking. When that building owner came, we talked to him and said, when you're doing this, you wanna put all this in here, you are really gonna restrict what can go in the front. We made that really clear with that building owner.
Oh,
And this is
really?
one of the types of things that, well, do you own the building now?
No.
Okay, but the last use that came in, maybe it wasn't the owner, but the use, we told them, and it's in the report, that it makes it really restrictive. So between the parking and the duplication of service, I mean, literally, Doug's been 3 in the last year and a half, smoke and vape.
Maybe 2 years, but yes, this
Maybe 2
is the
years,
third,
at the
yeah.
most.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of the one down by Tully's, the one that's called Ignite, the one down at Southtown. And I don't know about, I'm sure Speedway sells smoke and vapes. I don't think Quick Trip does, do they?
I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I mean, I do believe we have, and, you know, we probably should research it and have a report on how many we already have. I think it's just too many. I think we have enough.
Is there also one on the corner of, in the white building, on the corner of Dean and Monona Drive, south
That-
corner?
Yeah, it was there.
There
It's
was
not that,
there.
that's the one I was bringing up at the beginning. It used to be,
Yeah.
it's,
Is
but
that still
yeah.
there?
I
No, I don't
should
think
know.
it's-
I
now
drive
it's in
by there every day,
accountants.
but I,
I don't know.
It used to be.
Yeah,
Used to
it
be.
used to be.
It's not there anymore.
Not there anymore.
Okay. Any other comments? Do we have any kind of a motion related to this consideration of action this evening? Chris?
I guess if I make the motion, then we can't discuss it, so I'm gonna describe the motion. And a motion to table at least would allow us to get more information from staff on the number of smoke and vape shops and where they're at, and how many we have, and things like that. If we make a motion to not deny, it's just over. So I don't know the commission's preference. A motion to table would, once you motion to table, you don't discuss it anymore tonight.
Right.
Patrick?
I mean, I would entertain a motion to deny.
Okay.
Okay.
I would make a
Anybody
motion
else?
to deny.
I'll second.
We have a motion to deny and a second from Chris. Further discussion on the motion on the floor?
In the research to look at the unnecessary duplicative retail spaces, would we include all other retail spaces along Monona Drive in that?
No.
Like
it's just,
salons?
As the ordinance is written, as Corey,
Yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
written, if anything became like too much.
I'm just
yeah.
thinking there are a lot of duplicative retail spaces on Monona Drive,
Yeah,
Mhm.
much more than vape
you think so?
stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
yeah.
I think the
So-
salons is a good example. I mean,
Yeah.
especially as you get to the south end of Monona Drive, it's a lot of them.
Right. So we have any other comments, discussion on the motion on the floor? Yes.
If I may, just as a clarification, if for the motion to deny, the first and second, if we could get some reasoning and sort of elements to include in the motion, I would appreciate that. Thanks.
And I would say based upon the lack of parking, motion to deny based upon the lack of parking and duplicative retail establishments that are similar. Does that work?
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
So just because the applicant was mentioning that he could get some other statement in writing about parking, if it was denied, does he have the opportunity to present other information in a new application in the future?
I would imagine so, yes.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really hard to approve a zoning permit based on using a lot from a vacant building. Because what will happen with that in the future, none of us know.
Mhm.
If that building isn't raised, then there's a lack of parking on that site. There's more square footage than parking on that site. So even though you could get approval from them to use it until they need it, nobody in their right mind is gonna say, no matter what I do, you get 8 stalls. I mean, they couldn't. It would handcuff that property forever. But, you know, somebody can come if they have something in writing, but the permit would be based on that, and it would no longer be valid if they didn't have that parking.
Mhm.
And that building is for sale. I mean, there's a sale sign in front of it, so.
Right. Susan?
Well, I guess I'd probably be more comfortable with a motion to deny just based on lack of parking, rather than including the duplicative service. I see it as an issue, but I think that's a valid point, that we have other services that we have duplication of. And I think it's,
If you'd like to modify that, I would consider that a friendly amendment.
okay, then I would amend it to strike the duplicative services from the motion.
Okay.
And just do it based on parking.
Based on parking?
Yep.
Okay. Do you agree?
Yep, I agree.
Do I have, being one to second?
So,
I'll second
are we done with discussion?
Sorry?
Are we done with discussion?
We would, we have I need a second on the amendment.
I second it.
An amendment, and then we would discuss the amendment and vote on that, and then we would go back and vote on the original.
Yeah, I second it.
Yes. Okay, we have a second on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment?
If we deny this, that puts the end of it, he can come back but has to file another application, versus if there could be some resolution with parking that satisfies the commission, and we table this, then the applicant doesn't have to reapply,
Correct.
correct? Which I would be in favor of, now that we've gone down this rabbit hole of motions. I think it just awards the applicant the opportunity, if they can somehow resolve parking in whatever way they can. I have my doubts, but it doesn't, and can make them have to reapply.
They don't have to reapply, right. So are you making an amendment on top of the amendment? Or not, we have to vote on one before we can vote on another. So we have an amendment on the floor that's just about parking.
I don't know if the other, I'd open it up to discussion, I would say, before we make another motion.
Right.
Or an amendment.
Right.
I'd probably be open to that. I mean, that'd be tabling it, well, as Chris said in the beginning, I mean, giving them time to, or postpone, and the other thing is postpone to, not table it even, just postpone consideration, based on the concern for parking.
Right.
But procedurally, we probably have to vote on these other things and then do that.
Correct.
So,
We would have to
depending
vote on
outcome
the
of this.
amendment that we currently
Right.
have before us, which
Right.
is to vote on
Striking the duplicative
striking,
services.
striking, or, going with parking only rather than parking and duplicative.
Right.
So that's the amendment that's before us. If there's any other discussion about that amendment?
No,
All right, so let's take a vote first on the amendment, which is to go with only parking, denial, due to the shortage of parking, first. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay?
Nay. I'm an A as well.
2 nays?
Mhm.
Okay. So the motion carries. So we're down now to the original motion that's on the floor, unless some other amendment is provided this group before we go back to the original motion. Yes, Chris?
To table it, we'd have to vote down
This amendment,
what's
right.
on the floor
Correct.
first, and then some, we'd have to have a motion to table.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Could we discuss that now? I mean, would people be in favor of tabling versus denial?
Yeah, I would be in favor of tabling.
And I guess I don't understand the point of tabling. It's kind of hard for me to see how there would be some sort of resolution to the parking situation there based on the amount of stalls that exist on the property and the fact that the building next door is for sale. So even if something was in writing saying that they're granted 4 spots at that building gets sold and that parking goes away. So what's the point?
Unless it was written into
John?
unless it was written into the agreement.
Right.
As you buy the building, you're gonna lose a couple parking stalls to
Right.
the neighbor, which
Right.
would be pretty rare.
Right. Chris?
Also, we haven't discussed it, but we have a, 45-unit apartment building on that corner on St. Teresa and Monona Drive, and the neighborhood already is busted for parking. When we had the pre-hearing on that, the neighborhood all came in and talked about the lack of parking in that neighborhood. Now the streets are parked full. So I mean, we've had a lot of comment from the public about the lack of parking in the area.
Right.
And it's, I don't know the likelihood, I suppose it's fairly likely that that apartment building will be back for final approval. I see Doug nodding his head. So it's not going to get any easier to park in that neighborhood.
Right. Okay, so any other discussion on this motion, which was, again, this is the original motion that was put on the floor, that was to deny this based on
Lack of parking.
just lack of parking. Okay? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Sorry, just find
That's
that
right.
we just feel like there's a better location,
Yeah, sure.
somewhere, not here.
Sure. Okay. It's fine, thank you.
Thank you. So this thing I do, this, or this. So that takes us to number 7E. Public hearing for Sunday Realty Group on their request for consideration of a general development plan, GDP, and precise implementation plan, PIT, if necessary, for the site located approximately 112-208 Owen Road for multifamily development, case number 2-008-2024. Welcome. Come on up to the mic. Yes.
Am I assuming that 7C and D just fall off the table for lack
Yes.
of discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Welcome back. The floor is yours during the public hearing portion, so anything you'd like to do to walk us through the new plans, the floor is yours. And if you would like Doug to pull up the plans as you talk through it, since this is a public hearing, and we'd like the public to be able to see what you're sharing tonight. He can certainly either share the screen with you to do that, or just, you can point it, tell him what direction you want the slides to go.
What's that? Yeah, I'll do a quick overview. This is Kevin Burrow with KBA, Jeff Slindy, myself. As I think most of you know, this project was approved at a point in time, and it was approved at a density of about, I think it was 174 units, something like that. And by the time we got through with that entire approval process, there were many changes that occurred that made it practically impossible to break ground and to move forward. Namely, interest rates doubled. They went from 3.5% when we started our conversations, and we're at 7%. Construction costs went up over $2 million. we have frantically tried to assess how could we make this thing work. Then we got the notification that the United States Post Office was going to move, which they made the statement in some correspondence that we did not renew their lease. But that's not true. We extended that lease for 2 years. Mary O'Connor called me and said, hey, I thought you told me you extended that lease. I said, we did. She said, it's not that I don't believe you, but could I see it? So we shared the lease. When I started hearing rumblings of that, Jeff had contacted the broker involved, and he said, yeah, they're going to move. They're relocating. Okay. Any particular reason or what's going on? He says, they're just tired of your inability to be concrete with timeline. Simple as that. They want this off their to-do list, and you can't give us assurances as to when you'd have a space. So those factors combined, we just continued to say, what in the world can we do to make this work? We met with lenders. The conversation was, you guys need to increase your density. I said, no, I don't think that can happen. I think that the mandate was black and white at that time. And they said, well, that's the only thing we're seeing that works economically. The only thing we'll finance is at a certain point. We met with our architects, building contractors. What can we do? We interviewed a number of different builders. And the price just continued to go up. So it was like we were getting further and further away from the beer. Kevin's crew said, the only thing you can do is add another level and try to spread that cost over more units. I said, well, that sounds great, but I just don't know the receptivity. And in talking with people, I have gotten more comments and calls as to when are you going to get that project going? How long are we going to look at those potholes? The cops are tired of going there for the vandalism that occurs and the graffiti that goes on inside. Something needs to be done. By the same token, we can't, wave a magic wand. And like I said in one of our first meetings, if I had it my way, I would have condominiums in some component of this. And that is also quite close to impossible. We've spoken with lenders. When I did the Monroe Commons project, where Trader Joe's is, and the Monona Woodlands on Femrite, halfway through that project, it was like someone shut the lights off. Sales stopped. I had Monroe Commons half sold. I had Monona Woodlands half sold. The bankers were freaking out, so were we. We had threats of calling loans. There were no sales. And we've been told that not much has changed from our appetite. If you got 80% pre-sold with deposits, come and see us. So here we are. So we're looking at this, and then I reviewed the Monona housing plan from, I think it was 2019. And it talked about the reality that Monona's landlocked and the only way it can grow is up. And so I started asking, how severe would this be? And Jeff was like, I don't think it's going to be that horribly impactful. What about parking? What about traffic? So we did traffic studies. We felt that our parking was adequate for what we have, although I don't think it meets the standards that is currently for you. But from a practical standpoint, we are comfortable with that parking because based on our experience, we have another project that has a little over 300 units that has worked very well. And what we learned is that nobody is home at the same time. That's not even on a bus route. And apparently there's going to be mass transit here. And I'm not sure where the bus stop is or will be.
Close.
Okay. So we're, in our minds, from an operational perspective, and respectful of your requirements, I'm more concerned about the residents and their tolerance or frustration if they didn't have adequate parking. And like I said, we haven't encountered any problem with that currently. So I continue to think about Monona's housing dilemma, and I think that's the only thing that really hasn't changed. It's still there. People wanting to move into Monona have a heck of a time doing so, if they're lucky. I think you've probably all noticed the new sales procedure where it says coming soon, and then a month later showings occur, and then you see this big line of people come traipsing through the houses, and 4 or 5 offers, and
Per hour.
yeah, it's pretty rugged. And then the reality kicked in. I have had numerous people ask me about, when is those apartments going to be done? I don't want to have to put on a new roof. Geez, I get to replace my furnace. I don't want to. Is that going to make me more money? These comments have continued, and they're prevalent today. So our thoughts were that if we did come forward with a proposal, we need to make sure that we can do this proposal. And it'll still be necessary for the CDA's participation. It'll still be necessary to firm up bids. There's a new construction type that we have been alerted to that kind of opened the door and reintroduced us to the density conversation, and this is beyond my expertise, and it's referred to as a 3A type of construction. And that will enable, in some fashion, for us to, reduce or work construction costs in a way that the building contractors that we've talked to said, no, that's the only game in town right now. That's what you'll need to do. So that's the situation that we have. We're going to be building these units with condominium finishes. They'll be very nice. There'll be stainless steel appliances, in-unit laundries. That's another thing I get comments from people who are in their houses that have been there 30 years and plus. I'm tired of doing my laundry in the basement. I think that there is a real component in the marketplace that is ready to move, and they don't have anywhere to move to. And I've been told that by a number of folks. So we're thinking that this density request would be absorbed very, very well, and it would be a great addition to Monona. I'm really impressed with the design work that has been presented to us. We're going to have a really nice game room and community room, I should say, outdoor amenity space. And our thoughts were that we want to build this like something that we can be proud of, and that anyone in Monona would be happy to live there. So I guess that's about all I have to say. That's the background. Sorry for the long story, but we've been sitting parked for a couple of years, and we're trying to push the rope. So if you'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, Doug, if you could call up the slides. I'll quickly walk you through our presentation. I know it was in your packet, but I can give you a quick refresh and point out the highlights. The site's shown before you, highlighted in yellow. Clearly, it's the former site of Village Lanes and the adjacent retail building. Here on the next slide. What you see is our proposed site plan, which looks very much identical to the previous site plan. We simply added another story and stretched out underground parking that really doesn't show on the surface. So we're maximizing the amount of parking we can get within reason underneath the footprint of the building and beyond, still creating the plaza deck areas on both buildings, so you have outdoor amenity space above that basement parking, so the residents have a gathering space outside. And then access to the underground is contained towards the front of the lot with additional surface parking in the back of the lot. We've also increased the parking along that private drive between the buildings by introducing diagonal parking as opposed to parallel parking that was originally there. This will really provide more ample space for potential uses in the future as well, so you could do some outdoor gatherings, some festivals between the buildings and things like that, such that we're creating an additional amenity along with the parking that is required by your standards. We are still falling slightly short, but we're doing our best to try and maximize maintaining the open space, the green areas, et cetera. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Our landscaping plan has been included in the packet. We know this is just a pre-hearing conference, but we really want to be thorough with what we submitted, so you could react to it and give us the guidance that we need to bring this to the finish in the near future. So the landscaping's been redesigned. We've got tree islands along the private drive inside, plenty of canopy trees, screening to the west as we originally had to provide screening for the apartments directly adjacent to us. The outdoor amenity space is virtually the same as what was presented last time. Go to the next slide, and you can see a highlight with regards to that outdoor amenity area. We've got seating spaces, yard game areas, you can play bags or bocce ball. It'll be a rooftop paver system, so it'll be above underground parking, structure parking. But we will introduce turf on there as well, AstroTurf in some areas, such that it's easily maintainable, but an amenity year-round then at that point, so it's not getting chewed up or brown, et cetera, at certain times of the year. Grilling stations and just outdoor nice gathering seating areas. Go to the next slide, please. Now we've produced a number of renderings to show the density. We do realize this is one more story above what you previously approved, but in reality, it's 11.1 feet. It's minimal in regards to the overall scale of the area, and towards the end of our presentation, you'll see some height comparisons as well, and that was also included in the packet. We do have that community room on the upper floor, facing between the two buildings, so all residents can go up on that 5th floor, walk out on the roof deck, and have outdoor gathering space above grade in addition to the at grade. And we are stepping the ends of the building back along the western side as well. So it's a high level of detail in regards to the masonry, composite siding, and wood texture siding as well, to really create a residential feel to this. Every residence does have its own private balcony. They're deeply inset to provide some variation to the fenestration and the facade to really break up the overall mass of the building as well. And it's been successful in other locations, which you'll see shortly as well. Can you go to the next slide, please? Here's a view of the front of the building, basically, as you're coming down. We do want to maintain a commercial feel. It is understood that there's no true commercial space within the building, but we've created our lobby space in that front corner. We've also got our exercise room up front, so it really has a more of an urban commercial feel as you first approach the building, and it's really obvious then where you go to check in to consider leasing a unit in this building. Go to the next slide, please. Here's a view looking further down in between the two buildings. Again, that front corner is where the building steps back, and we've got that outdoor roof area as well to help reduce the sort of physical appearance of the building, although it's still creating the amenities that we want to do. Next slide, please. Here's a view further down the drive. You can look. We have a deep recess between the midspan of the building to also create the visual effect as you're driving by of separate buildings as well. Next slide, please. Here's a view at the end of the building then. What we're wanting to highlight is basically the same level of materials, quality of construction and detailing is on all 4 sides of the building. Next slide, please. Even on the back side in that courtyard area, as we would face the neighbors, same level of materials and quality of construction. And here's where we've stepped the ends of the building down, so it's only 4-story ends directly up against the property line there on the western facing side. Next slide, please. And then to highlight, this is looking down Owen Road. We have set the building back approximately 90 feet from the street. So despite the additional story, it is still further back and less imposing than our neighbor directly across the street. Next slide, please. And then here's a highlight view of that courtyard area for the Phase 1 building. The outdoor gathering spaces, the lawn amenities, the grilling stations, and the seating areas. Next slide, please. And this is a recently completed project up in Green Bay. We did cue into this with regards to the details, the quality of materials, and this really presents very well. You can see how the recessed balconies really break up the facade. It really breaks down the mass of the building. And you can see in the lower left-hand corner, it's actually a 5-story building. The upper right-hand corner is a 4-story building. The massing presents very similar, though, as you're in this neighborhood. The lower right-hand corner is the rooftop amenity. This building happens to have the privilege of overlooking Lambeau Field, so that's not quite the amenity we'll have, but it's just a wonderful outdoor gathering space. And you can see how we highlighted the main entry to the building, and this is called the Element. Next slide, please. And then, these might be hard to see, but interior shots of the common area to the building, the amenity spaces. It's a high level of detail. You're really welcomed as you come in this building. It's very well appointed, as was just mentioned. We're doing condo level finishes throughout the space, even in the common area spaces as well. So there's various gathering spaces for our residents to be able to enjoy. Next slide, please. And then a couple more views, the exercise room, the elevator lobby spaces, a coffee bar in the main lobby, and then a typical view in the upper right-hand corner of a residence with solid surface countertops, stainless steel appliances, and high-quality finishes within their kitchen. Next slide, please. Overall, sort of aerial view, I just highlighting the heights of the adjacent buildings. It may be difficult to see on your screen. We're sitting at 60.5 feet to the highest point in our building. Our immediate neighbors are at 53.8 and 50.2. Just kitty corner from us to the southwest or southeast, that building is presented as 62.43 feet, and the highest recently completed construction in Monona is the current, which is a neighborhood of 65 to 68 feet, just off of the frontage road there. Go to the next slide, please. And then just to highlight the setbacks of the building, we're at 87.5 feet to the curb off of Owen Road for phase 1, almost 100 feet off of the curb for phase 2, and we've been very deliberate about the space between the buildings. We're at 88.5 feet between the buildings. So it, despite the overall height of the building, the gap between the buildings is wider than the height of the buildings. So you will not have enclosing feel as you're driving through this area. It's really open and inviting. Next slide. And then just to close, this is the highlight image of the main front entry corner of the building.
Great. Thank you. Jeff, did you want to say anything?
I think they covered it pretty well. I'll just sit back and see what you have to say.
Great. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak during the public hearing portion? We do have one person. Thank you. We have, but you're not interested in speaking. John, is that right?
No, I am.
You are interested in speaking?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes, John, feel free to come up to the microphones if you would and introduce yourself. This is John Etzler.
Yes.
Who'd like to speak against John being from 5805 Anthony Place. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes and we're here to listen.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I just have prepared remarks that I just want to make, and we'll go from there. I want to thank the Planning Commission for give me this opportunity to speak this evening in opposition to the development plan that's being considered on the Village Lanes properties. 2 years ago, this commission recommended to the developer a site plan that would provide 161 housing units and 2 4-story structures to limit the massing of the structure and ensure it would fit within the existing community. At the time, the developer was proposing up to 50 units would be eligible for reduced rents. The plan also included commercial space for the post office and another small business. The commission indicated the developer could come back and request additional residential units, but doing so would be much more difficult. What has changed? The proposed site is still only 4 acres. The surrounding commercial and residential mix of housing has not increased in size or function. The city has not increased the width of the surrounding streets or added sidewalks along Owen Road or Anthony Place to accommodate the increased traffic flows. Nevertheless, the developers here before you are requesting a 5-story structure with 242 housing units, a 33% increase in the number of units from what was recommended, with no proposed workforce housing or commercial space. The reason for this drastic change? None. Interest rates have changed, but the economy is still strong. In fact, during the same 2-year period, the city of Monona has approved 3 other multifamily residential developments that are currently under construction, which were seeking approval for development during the same period as this project. The facts of this project have not changed. Number one, parking. Depending on the source, the plan calls for 357 stalls. City code, due to the number of units, requires a minimum of 377. In addition, 147 of the stalls are surface parking, which will surround the structures with blacktop. Owen Road, located to the north of the property, does not allow for on-street parking until you hit Anthony Place. Due to pre-existing housing units along Anthony Place, there may be 5 or 6 available slots on that street on any given evening for parking. If you're not familiar, Anthony Street only allows parking on one side of the street due to the width of the street. The size of the proposed structure and limited parking availability will ensure residents and their visitors will be parking in the surrounding neighborhood, creating safety and traffic issues. Number 2, massing. The proposed structure will be 5 stories, 3 stories higher than the multifamily apartment units to the west along Anthony Street, and 4 stories higher than for Boney's immediately to the west. The planning packet provides a height comparison to other structures in Monona to justify the massing of this structure. However, this is misleading. The structures highlighted in the immediate area, Heritage, Frostwood, and Woodlands, are built into hills. In fact, if you even look at Frostwood, from the sidewalk, there's a 5 to 10 foot hill leading up to the foundation of the structure, which masks the height of those structures. None of those structures are above 4 stories. The current is located adjacent to a high-density housing area and not a single-family residential neighborhood. The site of this proposed housing structure does not have any hills to hide its massing. It will prominently tower over the adjoining residential housing to the west and the commercial spaces to the east. It will not be able to blend in regardless of how much vegetation is placed around it. In addition, it sets a bad precedent for future developments in the city, raising the bar on height limitations even higher. Number 3, traffic flow. Based on the traffic study, only 65 vehicles traveled along Owen Road between 7:15 a.m. and 8:15 a.m. The study also indicates 60 additional vehicles will be leaving the development site during this period. This is almost double the number of vehicles on this corridor when the children in surrounding residential areas are walking to school or waiting for the bus to pick them up. In addition, the developer indicates the housing is being proposed so people working in Monona can live in Monona. The plan calls for 357 stalls. Assuming each vehicle leaves the site at least once in the morning and returns in the evening, an additional 297 vehicles will be traveling to and from the residential site through the streets of Monona outside of the peak periods identified in the study. Perhaps this traffic will have nominal impact to the intersection of Owen Road and Monona Drive, as the study indicates. However, it will have a major impact along Owen Road, Anthony Place, and the surrounding neighborhood community due to the lack of sidewalks along this corridor and increased parked vehicles in this area. The plan as proposed provides sidewalks in front of this facility and across the street as Heritage has sidewalks. However, once you get past Anthony Place, there are no sidewalks on Owen or on Anthony Street. Number 4 is the loss of commercial space. As mentioned before, the original plan included a small amount of commercial space for the post office and another small business. The new proposal includes no commercial space. The existing businesses housing in the Monona Center will be forced to close, providing another loss to the city's business base. This weekend, I canvassed my neighborhood to notify residents of this hearing and the pending development. Overwhelmingly, the response I received was that while they were opposed to the size of the development, they felt their opinion did not matter. While I too feel this way, I hope that the commission will take these facts into consideration and right-size the development to the levels previously advised in 2022, because nothing on this site has changed. And in regards to the rooftop gardens,
Yeah,
I just
no.
want to comment while they can't see
You're
Lambeau
well
Field.
beyond the 3 minutes. I was seeing white space there, so I appreciate you speaking, but I'm gonna
Okay.
put it
Understood.
about. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes. again, please come up to the mic, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and then, again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dennis Hanson. I've been a resident, actually the same house in Monona since 1975. My wife and I live on Queensway, a very long block from the proposal here. I've been retired for quite a while. When I worked, I was a bureau director in the Wisconsin Department of Justice, dealing with public safety issues. And while it's not on your agenda here, I'm wondering if the city of Monona understands what happens when you have huge apartment developments, which have been occurring in our city. We have one along Monona Drive, which is going to start construction, and now we have this proposal, and we have the current. And I'm wondering if we understand the impact of all those additional people, different ages, different occupations and such, on public safety. Certainly the police department is going to be very concerned to have an extra 1,000 or 2 people move into Monona, various concerns. The fire department is in rough shape building-wise. The city hasn't taken very much action at all to improve anybody's facilities, really. And so I bring that up as a matter of concern. Actually, I think the proposal that's made here is a good one for the use of the property. And I don't think that Monona is going to be able to resist building up, because people like living in Monona because of its location within the metro Madison area. Monona is a very easy city to live in if you're connecting with other parts of the city of Madison. It's easy to get to the bike trail, it's easy to get to facilities, there's easy shopping. For heaven's sakes, if there was an economic disaster, I've been within walking distance of everything I need for the last, since 1975. So people like living in Monona. They like the independent school district. There are a lot of good reasons to live in the city. But bringing an extra 1,000 or 2 people into Monona means that the city of Monona is going to have to respond in different ways, such as adding more police officers. Maybe making sure the fire department and public safety services are there for all of those people.
Okay.
That's the only comment I want to make, realizing that it doesn't have much to do with your concern.
Thank you.
Thank you
I
very much.
appreciate it. Anyone else?
This is Greg Polachek. I'm with Summit Credit Union. I'm not in person, but I am online.
Okay.
I have a couple comments.
3 minutes. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I've been in commercial real estate for over 40 years, and I have several designations, the CCIM designation, the CPM designation, and what have you. The residential use of this property is actually the highest and best use. Since the pandemic, our purchasing habits have changed. More and more people are purchasing online. You know, office space has actually changed a lot. Residential is actually the highest and best use of this property. It's actually a good use. I do represent Summit Credit Union. We are not opposed to the property. We actually are a neighbor. That's why I'm in attendance tonight. I did feel that the slide showing the heights of the building, I was a little concerned about that 5th level. However, when you look at the slide that shows the comparison to neighboring buildings, it's within line to that. So that does take care of some of those concerns. From our perspectives, we were looking more interested in the setbacks and how the treatment is between the adjacent properties, including ours. And so that's why I'm in attendance. And after looking at the presentation, I think we're satisfied that would be okay. In terms of the public safety and concerns that were raised, sometimes that is an issue that should be looked at in terms of multi-use. However, residential is is the highest and best use, and wanted to speak to that. And also, with the fact that interest rates have doubled, I can certainly understand why the developer had to increase the units in order to make his numbers work. So thank you for allowing me to present my viewpoints, and that's all I have to say. We are not against the project. We are in support of this project.
Thank you. Anyone else? During the we're here in the public hearing portion. Anyone else want to speak? Okay. With that, we will close the public hearing portion and move to the pre-hearing conference for Flynn Realty Company on the request for consideration of a general development plan, GDP, and precise implementation plan, if necessary, for the site located at approximately 112-208 Owen Road for multifamily development, case number 2-008-2024. Doug.
Thank you. Mr. Slindy of Slindy Realty Company proposes the demolition of the existing buildings and the phased construction of 2 5-story residential buildings along Owen Road as part of the new submittal for the site. The site totals just over 4 acres, and 242 residential units are proposed across two phases with ground floor activation. At this point, the applicant seeks Plan Commission feedback on the initial proposal with the intention to finalize plans thereafter. And as mentioned, this will be going for an informational presentation with the CDA tomorrow, the Community Development Authority, and they are most likely pursuing a TIF request as well. As far as the applicable regulations and policies, this was formally rezoned from retail business to Community Design District, CDD, and this allows the applicant flexibility and the opportunity to pursue a planned community development. And this allows for sort of coordinated planning for larger multifamily developments. And of course, the general development plan is the first component of that, more of the master plan for the overall, with the precise implementation plan being the detailed review of each building, most likely, each phase of the development, and that would follow subsequently after any GDP. So most of the discussion this evening will most likely center around the GDP. It was included and noticed, as we have in the past for a PIP. The applicant did submit more materials and sort of more detail than is typical for a GDP, so I wanted to notice it that way. If there's any feedback on things such as landscaping, lighting, those types of elements, it can be provided at this point, and that's why the notice was done as it was. In terms of process, this has been mentioned, but the Plan Commission did recommend to City Council, and ultimately the City Council did approve a GDP for the property in May of 2022. This included 175 apartment units with a portion of Phase 1 having workforce housing, affordable to approximately 60 to 80% of the area median income, as well as just under 5,500 square feet of ground floor commercial, with the intent to relocate the U.S. Postal Service into Phase 1 when complete. The applicant needed to revise the plans due to market factors, and it was agreed that pursuing a new GDP was going to be the best way to approach this request, rather than modifying the existing plan. As far as the zoning and land use, the property is already, as mentioned, zoned Community Design District, CDD, and it was rezoned in early 2022 as part of the initial request. The 2016 comprehensive plan classifies this property as commercial use in both current and future land use maps, which again, the definition from COP-C is land use for retail, service, commercial, and office uses. Commission were previously supportive of commercial in the ground floor of the building, with the applicant expecting to relocate USPS, although, as mentioned, notice has been given that they intend to relocate elsewhere in the city. The applicant has removed dedicated commercial from the plan, but instead has oriented the lobby exercise space, as well as offering a retail aesthetic at that corner, the front corner of the building facing Owen Road. And this is sort of similar, this treatment is similar to other projects that have subsequently been proposed with similar zoning elsewhere along Monona Drive in particular. And the Commission at this point should discuss their preference for activation of this particular, or the particular use at this location. One element that has been discussed with previous applicants is that CDD zoning does allow for the use to be converted in the future, does allow for a future commercial use should market conditions adjust, and current conditions have been included in the application materials as well. All that information is available online for anybody watching, and the possibility of that conversion may be something to discuss. As far as the proposal, the units proposed include a range from studio through to 2-bedroom plus dens. The range of units that's proposed can serve a wide spectrum of renters within the city. The materials discuss the supply challenges at the local and national level, how increasing supply can moderate rent increases and support affordability for all. Additionally, the 2016 comp plan does discuss upcoming demographic challenges within the city of aging population, increasing empty nester cohort, and does support increased density of mixed-use residential development in appropriate areas, calling out specifically mixed-use development in close proximity to commercial and transportation options being supported. And the Commission this evening should probably discuss the range of unit types, proximity to commercial, even if not on site, as well as overall location can support these goals. Site design, typically the Plan Commission looks for 30% of open green space. All the numbers are listed in the staff report as well as the materials. I won't call them all out, but there's a difference here between green space, a dedicated green space, as well as open space. The dedicated green space is at 22% across both for the 4-acre site, and the open space is 28.9%. The difference being the plaza deck for each phase that was in the application materials, sort of talking about the tenant space, the programmed area that would be there, including artificial turf, concrete pavers. Previously, the Commission felt that this met the intent of the ordinance, and it's definitely something to consider as it relates and as it impacts those two metrics. The setbacks, there are not specific setback standards given for this district. Instead, they're reviewed according to performance standards and adjacent uses. The applicant has located the building back from Owen Road, closer to the middle of the site with surface parking along the front and the rear of the building. Step backs are used as well on the north side of the building for that 5th floor to have a rooftop tenant amenity space, but also to limit that massing. Vehicle circulation is very similar to what was previously proposed, with 2 curb cuts along Owen Road, as well as a new connector street incorporated into phase 1. Underground parking is sort of achieved on the east and west edges of the site, with ramps going to the underground stalls, not conflicting here with any of the other connector street or surface parking. And again, the plans now show angle and parallel parking along the connector street. Something that may be discussed is the width of that street, and if there's possibility there, as was mentioned, for programming of the space, but possibly to enhance plantings there if the curb line were to change, for example, just as another possibility. Possibly a boulevard or something like that to provide, sort of break that space up a little bit. Could be something that's discussed. Additionally, a sidewalk is proposed in the right-of-way along Owen Road to the north of the site, enhancing the pedestrian connectivity, and a traffic impact analysis was updated and is included in the meeting materials. Summary from that is that no improvements to the existing infrastructure are recommended to accommodate the site traffic, taking into account the existing uses there. As far as parking, there was a discrepancy between the plans and the letter as far as the number of stalls. For the purposes of the staff report, I used the 118 underground stalls as shown in the plans rather than the letter. Of that, 357 stalls total are proposed across both phases, 145 of those surface and 212 underground, with 10 electric vehicle ready stalls shown in phase 1 with the ability to add more later, as mentioned in the letter. Conduit has been discussed in the past, and that may be something to consider. There are a lot of bicycle provisions that are included both interior and exterior to the building. There are wall-mounted racks, as well as one wall-mounted rack at the head of each underground stall around the perimeter of the parking garage, as is pretty typical that we've seen in recent developments, which does add another 72 racks. Additional surface racks are available in front of phase 1. This does leave a deficit of 20 stalls across the whole development, and the Commission may choose to discuss how that could be remedied, alternative transportation options, possible car share services, This is along the expected Madison Metro route that is expected to travel along Owen Road. I believe the closest stop would be the corner there of Monona Drive, but sort of thinking about that connectivity, pedestrian connectivity to that stop could be something that could soften and sort of ease the need for additional parking. Additionally, B-Cycle would be another option for bicycle sharing that we have seen other projects that have done this. Staff does have concerns with the amount of parking at grade, recognizing the accommodations the applicant has tried to make, but if there's opportunities to adjust that, to tweak that, that may be a good thing to discuss at this juncture of the proposal. Architecture and massing, the type 3A construction is mentioned that allows the applicant to go to 5 stories, utilizing a more efficient building method. Ground floor units are proposed around the base of the building, of course, and there's opportunity there. Staff believes for those to be differentiated more, meeting some of the goals of the comprehensive plan. Ability to have more private outdoor space, exterior access, entrance may sort of enhance some of the ADA accessibility, providing a different product offering as well for folks maybe with pets, you know, that would like easy access in and out of the building. Masonry is proposed at the first floor of the building with composite siding around the remaining 4 floors. Step balconies are included to break up the massing as well as the stepped 5th floor. And varied siding colors also assist with doing that sort of along the planes of the building. It does mention, the letter does state a retail aesthetic for the building. I think staff's suggestion is that that could be enhanced. The recent project in Green Bay was shown. I think sort of additional canopy use, signage, outdoor activation, and possibly including chairs and tables could be something to consider there. It may require modifications to the pavement, but if there's a way that there could be more people sort of milling in that area, again, that may get to the activation versus use. Additionally, the outdoor tenant amenity spaces are sort of surrounded by the building and sort of on the back side of the building with effective landscape screening, providing a dedicated space, outdoor space for residents. Inclusion of sort of comparable heights around the city was also included for discussion. The size of this site, just over 4 acres, does allow for the building to be set back from the adjacent properties, and the height is comparable to others in the city, have recently approved plans. Something to discuss possibly for the commission would be the density and massing shown, and how this given the adjacent uses and transportation connectivity, could be, is or is not in line with their vision for these parcels. And again, the densities are all included in the staff report. Just a couple more things. The green infrastructure is mentioned in the letter of application, and something to discuss, again, more of a PIP item, but possibly the installation of solar. The applicant is aware that a certified survey map would be needed to redraw some of the boundary lines here. State statute requires these be recorded within 12 months, although it was previously approved, it was not recorded. So again, that would be something that could run a concurrent path just as it did the last time. Stormwater plans were not shared, but lighting and landscaping were. As far as the landscaping, just over 3,500 landscaping points are shown on sheet L100. This is driven by the number of parking stalls on the site, and the calculations that were included in the staff report were based on all parking stalls, including those underground. Plans show 43 trees in total, including 29 evergreen trees, plus an additional 15 ornamental trees. Something worth discussing here is that the plan does exceed by about 400 points, does exceed the requirement for phase 1. Typically, the commission for anything that is less than 30% of open green space looks for exceptional landscaping, and that may be something to discuss if there are any suggestions for the plan. Again, a little more of a PIP item, but just something to discuss. Lighting plans, photometric, were included, as well as the specifications, and typically no more than 3-foot candles of light are allowed at the property line, and the plan appears to adhere with that. So there is no recommended action at this point, just discussion of the elements discussed or outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Did you breathe?
Call time out.
Had some coffee earlier, so.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Before I open it up to the commission, could one of you, or if not you guys, maybe John or Chris knows, or Brendan, being in the construction, can you enlighten me as to what type 3A is?
I can speak to that if you like.
Yeah, that would be great.
So type 3A construction is a way of doing wood-framed construction, but it's a higher fire rating required for the actual framing materials. So traditionally, there's 5 types of construction, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's various levels, A and B. Type 3A is it's allowed to be a wood frame structure, but the exterior walls have to be protected by 2-hour ratings as opposed to 1-hour ratings. And that allows a taller structure to be built because it will withstand fire for a longer time period, so firefighters can come. So type 5A structure, which is what was previously proposed, is capped at 4 stories unless you do 2 levels of concrete and then do your wood framing above that.
Right.
Which becomes more expensive.
Right.
So now we're still at the 1 level of concrete, and then we can do the rest in wood framing.
I appreciate that explanation. Is that helpful for people to get why? Okay. So, again, this is to provide some direction to the Sundays on this new proposal in front of us. And I'm going to put the new guy on the spot. John, would you like to start?
Thanks.
Well,
For the heads up.
well, you know.
So we're not.
It's not like we're just
commenting.
providing, we're commenting,
Feedback.
giving feedback based
Okay.
on what you're saying. And no pressure.
Okay, no pressure. I think the use is appropriate for the site. There are some discrepancies in all these documents and things that you're probably aware of. Some of the drawings call out 3 bedrooms, but there's no reference to 3 bedrooms in the letters, things like that, which I don't think are anything to overcome. I guess I personally don't have an issue with the height. I would like to see the top treated maybe a little differently, much like the Green Bay project that you showed, or the one on the corner of Monona Drive and Cottage Grove, where it has sort of a brow at the top versus just a sort of a nothing at the top. I do like the fact that you stepped it back on the 5th floor, which I think is nice. I think the commercial space, personally, is incredibly challenging for this location, and specific that you set the building back from Owen Road. I think the parking, in phase 2, the parking looks to be further to the south with the driveway over the parking, underground parking. And that'll take a fire vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. I guess if I have concerns, it has to deal with the shortage of parking, because earlier this evening, we denied an application based on the shortage of parking, and the green and open space requirements not being met.
Are we similar? I think we're using the same conditions in our last approval, where we're at like 29.9% of coverage using the plaza space. Am I correct with that, Doug, or maybe Kevin even?
Overall, I have this at 28.9%. Yeah. With plaza.
That's all.
Yeah, it's close.
Yep.
Yeah.
Parking close, but
Yeah.
doesn't meet the requirements. And I will say, in regards to the parking, if you hit a nice 3-wood into the city of Madison from this site, the parking requirements would be drastically different.
They would.
And you would exceed the parking requirements dramatically, which would then allow you to reduce the parking to get to your green space requirements. So that is a challenge. That's all I have.
And not to worry, we'll come back. This is an open discussion, so it's not like you only get one shot at the ball, so to speak, since you used the green and fruit. Rob?
Yeah, thank you. As far as land use, it's similar to the last one, and I think it's an appropriate land use. I do have concerns with it, though. When you came here before, pretty much everyone on the commission agreed that there was too much density for the site. You redesigned it. We all agreed that it looked better. It was better. And now you couldn't make it work financially, so you added a whole nother building and 33% more density, which is gonna have effects, I think. So, in no particular order here, there's a couple of things. We're losing commercial. It wasn't a lot of commercial to begin with, but I think it is a loss of commercial, and I see that as kind of a negative. We had workforce housing before, we're losing that.
Well, I guess maybe.
The city, can I finish?
Sure, sorry. Yep.
The community came out, the neighborhood came out with concerns over density and the size before. I don't think we should forget that. There's parking deficiencies. The traffic, I brought this up before, I think the bigger concern is the traffic going west on Owen, because that's a shortcut. And people take that to Bridge, or, and then people taking the shortcut, they cut on Pheasant Hill Road. And now you got an intersection, a T intersection, that's gonna be seeing an increase of traffic. And I think there's some concerns there that I have, because I live in the neighborhood and I see it, so. We're not meeting our green space requirements. I know we discussed that and kind of came to a compromise there. I don't think the height comparisons are as easy as you make it sound, because there's varied heights in the development across the street. The Current is kind of a standalone project. It doesn't have to, it's easier to justify that in that setting, I think, along Monona or Broadway. And this is a little different area. This is a transition zone between our commercial corridor, where we have a lot of vibrancy and commercial activity right in that area with Ken's and Fraboni's and Fratelli's. Molly Yoga just moved in across the street, so there is commercial activity in that space. And now we're adding another story. I don't know what we're getting from that. Specifically because of the neighborhood's comments and what the commission agreed upon was, at the time, maybe tunes have changed, because interest rates went up, I want to add another story to the building, and I think it's very canyon-like when you look down that. And the architecture of the building, it's very similar, but it's not as good as it was before. You added masonry to the ends of the buildings. You created more of an entrance before. There was a lot more brick and masonry on the building. So that's a reduction, or kind of a thing against the project as well. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of completely contradict our approval of last time. Let's break. Like GI plans, what are your plans for green infrastructure? Do you have any? I was gonna ask.
Yeah, I mean, we engineer all of our buildings to be able to accept solar panels on the roof. And with that additional load factor, we could then also transition, if necessary, to any sort of green infrastructure, green roofs, those types of elements.
Okay.
We will do high-quality insulation, basically above code minimum standards. Is our standard is to always exceed code minimum for exterior insulation, envelope, windows, doors, insulation, those types of things.
Okay. I was gonna ask anybody really, is there a downside to this type of construction? The 3A or whatever it was?
No, it's just,
I guess I'd prefer your opinion on this one.
well, ironically, it used to be more expensive, but in light of the need for housing and how contractors have finally in this market come around to understand how to do it, it's become more cost effective.
Okay.
I think he outlined two ways to do the building structurally, which are both fair ways to do it. I think the challenge with 5 stories of wood, even though it's fire treated, is that, you don't see 10-story buildings just out of wood because of shrinkage and things like that. So it does have its challenges. They can be overcome with good detailing and so forth, but that's probably the biggest challenge I would see in it. But it's a common way to do a 5-story wood structure.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now.
Susan?
Well, I don't have a huge problem with the lack of commercial, because I thought last time, basically, we were kind of considering the post office as the one main one, and the other one always sounded kind of iffy, just because of its location. We just didn't feel we were more comfortable making it mostly residential. You know, I was also disappointed to see the amount of increase in density and the things that we are losing, that we're losing some of that workforce housing and parking without additional parking. You know, the increased density, I understand that also to be a cost factor. I mean, the reality has kind of hit us, and you know, the post office is no longer a factor. That seemed like the most likely thing to go in there. I guess I wouldn't assume that there should be commercial space there. I think that, I don't have a problem with that part, with making it residential, and I appreciate your trying to give it the appearance of that, and I appreciate the setbacks. Not 100%. You know, I think the height, I mean, while some of the height of some of the other buildings is because of hills, visually, it still works because of that, because the height is not, it doesn't stand out a lot. The concern for me still is a little more of the density. I just, you know, and I'm not, you know, I know parking was a big issue for us last time. I've rethought that a lot too, and I think I know we do have stricter parking regulations than most places do. The fact that we will have a bus, and you know, that you're putting EV stations in, there could be, I don't know if you've thought about offering some ride sharing, you know, that could be something you could consider down the road too, if parking were an issue. You know, I guess for me, I also think the not meeting our code parking here is different than the previous business that we talked about, simply because the nature of that business. I mean, that you had customers coming in and out all day, and that was a whole different kind of structure than when you're talking residential. So I don't think this is comparable with the fact that we just denied one proposal based on parking. I think this is very different. And I know the traffic study doesn't indicate a significant change. That's still a little hard for me to believe. You know, people will come and go at different times, but it just is it's a lot more people. I also do like, though, that you have some 2 bedrooms plus dens. I like having that option. I think, you know, some people who move aren't going to move into a 1 bedroom, and even though, yeah, it was confusing, because I thought on the plans there were some actual 3 bedrooms. Maybe that was a 2 bedroom den. That's the kind of thing you'd need to get cleared up in the future. So I guess the only thing architecturally, you know, I think it is a nice looking building, and I do believe you do quality work internally. Landscaping is something I guess we could pay more attention to later, but I think that there does need to be a good buffer between anything that goes there and the houses on Anthony, and the other apartments that are there. Let's see if I have it there. I certainly like the fact that a lot of this, more canopy trees were mentioned, possibly some more canopy type trees when you get to the landscaping part. This is jump ahead to PEP kinds of things. Yeah, I guess I don't have anything to add other than what's already been said. I think it's a good quality project. I think it's appropriate. My concern is still a little bit the density. I understand that you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place on that, though, so I'll wait and hear what the other input is. That's it.
Sorry.
So this is just, I feel like I need to say this out loud. It's not, I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but, you know, we keep hearing what can't be done because lenders, architects, like all of these people that are needed to put together these designs aren't willing to do it for whatever profitable reason. So it's difficult, I think, to sit in these seats when we have our plans and we have policy and we're trying to do the best thing that we can. Like, we would like condos like you. This is not against you at all. It's just, I just have to voice this because like you know, you had said, I would love to put in a condo, but we need to have 80% pre-sold before anyone's even gonna talk to us. Well, these are just decisions that are beyond our control, and I think that just makes it difficult to look at a project like this. And, so I just, for what it's worth, that's how I feel. But, it's, I understand what you're saying, and I'm very sympathetic, empathetic, and, you know, as far as the project goes to, you know, we agree, we talked about putting housing here, we rezoned so that could happen. The retail or the commercial, I understand what you're saying, that would be a challenge, but I guess part of what I was concerned about it the first time that we talked about it was that you do have other tenants. And where are those tenants going to go? We don't want to lose those businesses in Monona. So that was something that we talked extensively about, if I recall. And the post office was one, but there were the others as well. So that's something, you know, if this housing project is going in and there's, you know, whether it's 175 or 242 units, I have no idea what retail would appeal to people there. Maybe there'd even be something that would meet the needs of that population. Plus there's other apartments that are going in around as well. So I know that's a difficult thing in the market, and you provided some documentation of that, and we've heard this from other people, so I understand the challenges with that. The concerns about traffic, it's hard because we look at the studies and the studies say there's not gonna be an impact, but like Rob, I live in the neighborhood and my kid has to cross Owen every morning to get on the bus, and there's no stop signs there. And it's something that if this goes forward, the city might have to take a look at, and the school district might have to take a look at, you know, is there a need to put some different stop signs in different areas, because there's no stop sign on Owen right now. There's one way, but not four-way. And there is the intersection at Pheasant Hill.
Yeah.
And like, there just might need to be some considerations for what that would look like and what the impact on the city would be. Maybe there would be some sidewalks. I mean, if the bus is gonna be there, maybe we need sidewalks there anyway. That's again beyond this discussion, but it is a consideration when we're thinking about approving something that is going to have that impact on safety and the neighborhood, and we want to make sure that there would be enough, that we're not going to get in like a T-bone accident at those intersections. So then let's see. A specific comment, I guess, I have is about, in the staff report, there was discussion about what was gonna happen in the roadway in between the buildings, and it doesn't show like a boulevard or something, so I'm just thinking, if somebody's backing out of that, they have to go all the way down to turn around and go out, which I don't think is that big of a problem, but having something there, like a boulevard, would maybe help with the traffic flow, especially when you get to the circle. I mean, I don't know, I don't have the distances, and even if you put the distances on here, I wouldn't really know. I'd have to ask Chris. But I don't think there's a lot of room, and I was thinking like, how are you gonna push the snow, and how are you, it just seems kinda tight. So that's a specific, that's a PIP type thing, but that is something that I think needs to be reevaluated. I do like how you have the density off of the property lines. I mean, that was something you had in the first one, and I still like that. So I think that's good. There's a lot of rock mulch in here. A lot of rock mulch.
Could I answer that? Or do you not want me to?
I don't know.
Sure. Oh.
Okay.
Okay, well, the reason why we do that is because pets are on site, and when we have grass and the animals go to the bathroom on the grass, it dies. And so the rock mulch, we've actually had to replace a ton of grass up in Green Bay with the rock mulch. And traditional mulch, I think everybody's kind of gone through that in
Yeah.
life, where you have to replace it every year, and it just doesn't look great. It's, you can get really attractive rock today. It's, but,
Expensive too.
yeah, well, you do it
Yeah.
once.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of it though, so, I don't know.
We can look at it.
I mean, it might just be me that's not a huge fan, but I get it. Let's see. I think, you know, the density is a lot, and I, like I said, I'm sympathetic, I understand the concerns, but I don't know. I'm less concerned about the parking now than I was before, because there is going to be a bus. Before, that was not a thing. So I could see individuals using the bus and not needing a car in the same way that we were concerned about before. Oh, and I did have one other question. You mentioned that these apartments could be a draw for those looking to move out of their homes. And I mean, I hope that would be the case, you know, because why the people that are coming that are wanting to live in Monona, there are some that want to live in apartments, but there are ones that are looking to live in houses, and this isn't addressing that need. So it's not a house. I mean, it would require people to move out of the house into the apartment, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a whole chain, which was in the paperwork too, but it's not an immediate thing, so.
Have you got? Chris?
Okay. First, I mean, you have a lot of detail here, and really tonight's more of a GDP than a PIP, and I'm gonna mix my metaphors back and forth all night, because you gave us information, so we might as well respond to some of it where we can. So the big issue of the GDP, I'm not opposed to the 5th floor. I do have an issue with the density, and this is a very tall building, and I think some of that can be solved architecturally. I think somebody else referred to that project they're doing on Cottage Grove and Monona Drive. If you look at it, that 5th floor is set back on 3 of the 4 sides. Wherever there's a lot of visibility, they did a nice job of pulling it back a little bit, which might affect your density a little bit too. We've added a lot. I think the parking and a few of the things with the building, if we could just find a few spots to take out just a little bit, keep the 5th floor, but do a few of the things that are there. It takes away the massing of the building, and that's really a GDP comment. Positive comment, we've spent a lot of time on this site. So a lot of the things we're talking about, we've seen, we've worked through. I kind of agree with you. We looked at the green space and what we're doing, and we always, if we can have a really highly decorated area like that, common area behind Phase 1, I mean, we've always given credit for that, because it's not grass, but it's so much more usable and so much more attractive to the tenants than just grass. We've looked at that and said, yeah, you know, we can include something like that, and some really nice landscaping around it. That's really an amenity to this whole place. And the one thing we have to remember too, when we look at this site, it's pretty close to 100% impervious right now. So this, I mean, if we end up shy by 1%, but we have all these amenities and nice things on the outside, I would be okay with that. I think we've made a great improvement. Now, I say that, and like somebody else mentioned, this building will be here for 50 years, so we have to make sure we have it built for the next 50 years. So anyhow, that's the detailing. I think what helps with the 5th floor here is you've got such large setbacks. You know, we've talked about height in different areas. I agree with everyone else, that's not a great comparison. I mean, the project you built, Woodlands, I mean, the road's what, 10, 15 feet below it, and all these, the only one that really compares is Current 2. And Current 2 was designed specifically in an area where we look for higher densities, higher amenities. That was an area that was taken on by the city and said, we want to really concentrate here. So this really isn't the triangle. So I believe it's a little different area. Having said that, I think with the setbacks, and if we can do a little bit more with architecture, just to peel out some of that height, not peel it out, but soften it. I think you know what I'm getting at. Loss of commercial, I agree. I'm probably as big of an advocate for commercial in Monona as anyone. I really am sad. I'm really glad you gave us explanation for the post office, because what we've read in the paper has been totally different. And when we read in the paper that they were gonna go back there, but then you decide not to extend the lease to them, so they quit. I mean, I'm like, what the heck, right? Because everybody in Monona, this is a perfect location, and a lot of people will not like driving down River Place. It's different. As far as commercial though, I have to agree a little bit with what John said. This is tough, being off Monona Drive. I'm huge advocate for commercial. I think on Monona Drive, I'm really pushing even there. We have a hard time sometimes, so it's tough. I really like what you did with the facade to make it look commercial. The bigger glass, the aluminum storefronts and everything. And I'm going to get to, as GDP is concerned, I will get back to GDP eventually. Phase 2, well, I'll talk about it a little bit right now. Parking's an issue. What do we do to fix it? I understand Madison has different standards. I understand the experiences we've had in Monona with everybody coming in and say our standards are too much, and then we end up with a problem and spend a few $100,000 to add parking at the city's nickel. So it doesn't always work out the way it's presented, and I haven't seen anything to tell me that our parking standards are off yet for experience we've had with other large apartment complexes. Your parking is off really in phase 2. So for me, I would be more concerned with phase 2 than I am with phase 1. Phase 1, I believe you exceed our standard in phase 1, correct? Yeah. So for me at least, in a GDP approval, I would want some note that the parking can be revisited and accompanying solutions if we see an issue during phase 1. Or if, we'll all be there. We'll be watching your parking. You'll be watching your parking. And you said it yourself, Bert, you want places for your people to park. And if all of a sudden you build phase 1 and wow, we're filling this whole thing up, we aren't gonna have enough stalls in phase 2. You're gonna have the same concern we're going to have. Ours has to be in writing. You know that for a GDP. So for me, I would like to address it that way. I think right now, I'm worried about it, but I'm not worried about phase 1. So for me, a GDP condition, it shows a little bit of, you're betting on that you're right and we're not right with our standards. So really you're betting on what you believe is enough. Right. But I think by the time you would build phase 2, unless it goes right away, and I doubt you'll fill the building that fast, I think we'd all have a better sense of what the parking lot is like there, because that area does not have parking. I'm shocked when I've driven by it a couple times since I saw this coming back that you don't have people parking in your parking lot. Are you throwing them out or what?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because they've always been parked in there, and there's never been enough parking, and I go by, oh, he must be doing something because nobody's here.
Yeah.
We babysit that building like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, so other than the potholes.
Well, we're not putting any more money in that building.
So, we all know the area's short of parking. We all know we can't count on street parking there. So that's where my concern for parking goes is phase 1, the way you've got it designed, it works. Phase 2, not so sure. Somebody mentioned the loss of affordable housing. 2 things. I believe this is affordable housing. You look at 80%, I think that's an income of, what is it, 87,000 or something right now? So when people say they've got their 80% AMI or whatever, that's like 87,000. Those people will be renting here. Some 60 and 70% AMI will be renting here. But the thing is, I brought a copy, but with part of a copy, because Act 243, which was passed in 2017, says that we cannot tell the applicant what rent level they can have based on income. It's illegal for us to do it. It's a state law. So we can't sit here and say, well, I'd like you to put in 40%.
Sure.
And I think you probably know that.
We do.
Okay. So for us to say that we'd like it, yeah, it'd be nice, but I believe your efficiencies and your 1-bedrooms are going to have a lot of that type. It's just you're not committing to it. We have it. People will want this, but we're not committing to it and saying we will have this every time you check our rent rolls. And I get that. And I'm not trying to speak for you, but I believe that's the market you're going for.
Correct.
Okay. loss of post office, I mentioned that. I'm really glad you explained that because that's huge. I got the height. Doug, you said something about ground floor access. At least along that common driveway, there's not really room for that. Same way with trying to put a boulevard in, there's just not enough room between those buildings. And if we tried to create more, we're going to have to move buildings, and I'd hate to slide buildings towards the outside property line. So it's just going to be hard, because if you look at their layout, they've got sidewalks, and then they've got a fairly narrow area that they're gonna saturate with landscaping for us. That makes it hard to have a little patio or something out there, but I love the fact they all have the, you've got an area for all of them, a little outside area. And that's great, and I do like the way, I mean, I'm sorry I'm always talking about what you didn't do, but you've done a great job with articulation and moving the building around and doing some of this. I'd just like to see some in the greater mass that's just a little different. And I'll probably get to that. Traffic counts, the traffic analysis, and I've got some of it tabbed. They talk about no appreciable increase, and I believe you when you talk about what you've got, but you've got to understand too, if you go through this traffic analysis, there's no appreciable increase based on what's there now. That doesn't even consider the bowling alley. When the bowling alley was there were hundreds of trips per day coming in and out of that bowling alley, especially at night and on the weekends, the time you really want to be enjoying your own property, your home.
At bar time too.
And at bar time, yeah. But so anyways, I read through it. I believe it. I'm a little shocked, but when you take into account that there's no bowling alley traffic, there's a lot less traffic coming out of the site than there ever was in the past. I'm sorry?
Nothing, I just said right, right. Nothing,
Okay.
yeah.
Stop bars and signs, that was a minor thing. Lighting, you're going all shielded, warmer temperatures. You really expect us to be able to read this lighting plan we got? I mean, really? I don't think the young eyes can even see what that says, those foot candles. So just, you know, if we get the PIP, probably something we could actually read. That'd be terrific. I don't remember hearing you say, but are we correct in Doug's number for the underground parking versus what was in your letter?
I think it's
Yeah.
118.
I counted it on your plan. Doug counted it on your plan. Your plan shows 118.
The letter mistakenly had a wrong number.
Okay, I just want to make, I know we've talked about it, but I didn't hear you say that this is. So what we have on our plan is correct.
Yes.
Okay. You know this is coming, more masonry somewhere, somehow. I mean, you've gone from quite a bit of masonry to basically the ground level is masonry, and that needs it. But even your one you showed us in Green Bay had places that came up. I thought, again, the one on Monona Drive and Cottage Grove Road did a really good job. What was nice about there is they didn't just send 3 chutes of masonry up. They have varying heights and different, they did things to make the building look different. And it's not my current note, but while I'm on it, I think it would, the reason, I do have by the note, it's a lot of LP Smart Side for 4 stories of nothing but LP Smart Side and a couple of those panels. So I think if you could find somewhere for some more masonry, it'd be appropriate. Like that. The entryway, it still doesn't feel big enough for a project of this size. So I don't know if maybe that's a place where you could get some masonry or more glass. I know you've got problems with floor thicknesses and ceiling thicknesses, but it should be obvious in a building of this size. It should be dramatic. It should be, I mean, it could be really, really cool entry, but you know, right now, at least for what we see, it looks like, okay, go down this alley and come in here and you're in the front door. It could be really a dramatic, really cool thing and a centerpiece of your building.
Agreed.
Okay.
It's just a cost thing.
I know, but sidewalks at the street you have, we talked about walk paths in general, of course, the one along Owen, and keeping those, I think there's 2 in the back, keeping those connected, just so we have connectivity between everybody. Somebody else mentioned it, but the canopy trees along Owen Road, there's going to need to be canopy trees there. Again, the entryway, I would say, it probably hasn't had any look at your PIP level, but not totally. More look at the landscaping at the entry, again, to make that entry stand out and be dramatic. lighting plan. I love what you did up on the roof deck with that balcony and a common area, and that setback really helps the building. I mean, it really makes a big difference on what you see from down below, so that's why I'm saying if there's any other areas we could do it, maybe might lose a little density, but again, we're all a little worried about that. I don't see any community room / amenities in phase 2. Did I miss that?
That's just a placeholder, but yes, we will have their own amenity spaces. We just haven't gotten to that level of detail for phase 2.
But that would reduce density.
Potentially,
We
Well,
could
unless-
potentially pick up a unit or two
Well,
by incorporating.
unless you build more building, you would. I mean, if
Right.
you're
Yeah.
gonna make
Right.
community rooms and amenities, then that's a
Yeah.
couple less units or whatever it ends up being. But
Yeah.
maybe that's something that helps us get to where we need to be. Couple less units, that's 3-4 parking stalls right there.
Mhm.
Um, So I mentioned the thing about parking would probably be reviewed in the PIP for phase 2. There'd be a condition in the GDP for that. And I'm sure you're going to be doing that yourself to make sure that you have the parking you need. A question for Doug, is there a TID district here now? I keep hearing TIF. Is there one in place?
This particular property was removed from the existing district,
That's
but
what I
it's,
thought. I didn't think it was under a TID district.
it's under consideration for a new district.
Okay, all right. I mean, I heard that, and those aren't fast to create, so I just wondered where, okay. Bear with me, I got all these tabs. This is for parking. I won't go through it. This is all the traffic study. I went through all the details, and I believe the traffic study. I mean,
It's not right, though.
Pardon?
Well,
Five trips heading west on Owen,
I
that's.
agree. They said 20% of the traffic going on Owen, and then the concern is more than 20% gonna go on Owen, so.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, it's gonna be more than five increase.
But we've also not included the bowling alley. That's the
well, and also keep in mind that the post office traffic, which when you look at a traffic generator, a post office is a huge traffic generator. I mean, it's right next to a daycare. I mean, and we have 2 daycares in the Monona Center. So, I mean, I agree with common sense, but in talking about our specific users that we have here, they are heavy traffic users at the Monona Center. So,
There is less than there was. I think I mentioned this last time you were here, but right now with your proposed phase 1 build out, you've got 2 driveways tight to each other. And before that was a problem to solve because of that post office box, but that's no longer there probably when you're doing this. Would make it a lot easier to take your driveway from your strip center right now and just turn it into the main drive, so that somebody has right of way. When you have 2 driveways next to each other, if I'm in the left one, Jeff, and you're in the right one, and I want to go right and you want to go left, we're watching the traffic on the one, we're watching pedestrians. Now I don't know if you're coming out and hitting me or if I'm hitting you. It makes it for a lot more traffic issues as far as potential impacts. So it would be really easy without that post office box. We struggled with it before because of that box, but to turn it in, and that way your strip center customers have to stop and wait for your apartment traffic, and then they turn, and then they have a turn on. So take a look at that in your PIP. Landscape points we talked about. I did comment before, but I've got to say it, I love the first floor amenities you have laid out here right now. And I assume that turf over on the other area might be used eventually for a dog run? You got one in the middle that I assume would be the lawn games. How about the other area that's further to the west?
Yeah, we were actually discussing that earlier, and
Whether it'd be a
the
dog run or what
yeah,
it'd be,
the
it's on top of the deck.
right. The dog run was mistakenly dropped from the plan, but it'd still be on the western side.
Okay,
In the
good.
grassy area, the natural grass.
Natural grass?
Yeah,
Okay.
further off the positive.
well, we would probably opt for turf.
That's
Yeah.
what we're doing in Green Bay.
So,
I think the
but-
grass issue
yeah.
is real. Pets, over 50% of our residents have pets. And most of those people don't think they need to clean up after their pet,
And
much less place where it doesn't specify.
then don't forget a convenient water source nearby.
Sure, yeah.
My other tabs are entry and, again, the complement for the facade on facing Owen, that we make it look that way, and if something happens to come up, but it won't. It's possible, though, with your phase 2 construction, you might find somebody that wants a little commercial space, so don't totally throw it away. It's possible. And I guess I would like to just address some of the speakers' comments. The gentleman that was on Anthony Place looks like he's left. He talked about it's too dense, not enough parking. I think that's one of the things we've talked about, but I think we're close enough that can be worked out. The massing was too high. Again, these setbacks and some of the things you're doing make a difference. The traffic count and impact, again, some people have a concern with that, and there will be less trips coming out of here. It's just a matter of what direction are they going to go, and I don't know that. And the loss of commercial space, we all agree with that, but the one thing I'll say to him too is with that loss of commercial space, we picked up a lot of parking, which allowed you to have this more density, because there's a lot of parking stalls for the post office and other commercial spaces, which now allocate to the units you have there, and which I think really it was the thing that allowed you to go to a 5th floor, probably. Gentleman from the former bureau director for the Department of Justice, I doubt anyone in this room has more expertise with safety than he would. So I certainly defer to him, and I agree we have to think about safety and fire, and you know, as we add units, we've talked about, we add units to the city, we need to add fire, we need to add police, we need to add services for all of this. 1,000 people need services. And then the last gentleman, he just spoke pretty much in favor of it. And he agreed with the main thing you want here tonight is this is an appropriate use, and would I in some way, shape, or fashion support the 5th floor? Yes. A couple of issues I've talked about. Okay.
All right. Always when you get to the end and everybody's spoken, it's like, all right, what's left? So, I mean, I supported the appropriate use of this. I also feel pretty strongly about commercial property, but in general, the economy's pretty strong right now, but retail is not, and there's reason. And the reason is because younger generation is looking at brick and mortar retail as not that important. They're purchasing everything online. We know that. I like the diversity of the units, the makeup of the units in the building. I'd like to see owner-occupied housing in Monona, but we know why that's not happening. So it's not worth engaging, and we talked a little bit about that with condos, but it's not so much that they're not going to look at it, it's that, you know, the federal government's not going to back mortgages until the building is 75% occupied. So condos as a what do you call it? Condos as a I'm sorry, I'm looking for. A long time ago, I bought a condo as my first house, right? It was affordable.
Starter home?
It was a starter home. That's not happening anymore. It's not feasible. The only way that's going to work is if you have people that are offloading a home and they've got a lot of cash and they can purchase that condo outright because they're not getting a mortgage. But anyway, in 1970, the population of Monona was 10,420 people, which is significantly larger than it is now. And I guess that a lot of that had to do with children then, because families were much larger. So even back during that time period in 1970, I think the bowling alley was still there then, right? Yes, the bowling alley was still there then. In fact, I think it was 1960, yeah, anyway. So lots more kids on the streets when we talk about safety. And we had buses on the streets then too. Right, Chris?
I don't remember buses going through in Monona.
In Monona?
No,
Just
I think
Monona
the
Drive?
main-
Anyway, lots more kids on the street with bicycles, pedestrians, walking to school, all that sort of thing, than there are now. Right now, the population of Monona is somewhere around 8,685. So all those kids on the street, bicycling, walking, and safety, I would imagine it's much safer now. We have helmets that kids are required to wear when they're riding bicycles. And so the safety, we've come a long way from a safety perspective, I suppose. I don't know, I've got a lot of stuff here. Chris mentioned the traffic at Village Lanes when it was a bowling alley, when you had people coming out of the parking lot at bar time. and driving through the streets when I don't know, in the 70s, we were a lot less lax, we were a lot more lax when it came to enforcing drunk driving and that sort of thing. So, anyway, we have public transportation options coming. The parking situation, I think that there's a solution there. Madison Metro is gonna serve that area, and I think that between that and a bunch of other options, we could probably come to some sort of agreement on parking. And really looking at the height of the building, I think 5 stories is appropriate. I think that we could look at a couple of different options to make that work, but in general, in Monona, if we're not building higher, we're not doing much. I mean, we only have, that's our only option in Monona. We don't have green fields that we could just swallow up like Sun Prairie and develop and increase our tax base. So I think overall, I am in favor of this project, looking at it, and I think that I'm looking forward to see what you come back with based on the information that you received tonight from everybody else on the committee. So, yeah, thanks for coming back.
So Nancy, I didn't comment yet.
Brendan?
Okay. I think that appropriate intended use, I don't have an issue with the total elevation, but I would agree with John about just the architectural finish at the top of that building. I would find solutions to make that more visually interesting up there. I think the setbacks are okay. I don't know that I was in the meeting where in 22 when I would have seen the comparative on the amount of brick and masonry, but yeah, if that's a loss, that's an unfortunate loss. That'd be nice to try to figure out some way to incorporate elements of that, if at all possible. I understand as well about the commercial. I think for the specific siting of this building, I think it's especially true for the comments that have already been made. But if there's going to be ground floor units available, one of the things that there's just a general shortage of in any place is universal housing, universal design, not just specifically ADA focused, but things that are anticipating people being able to age in place. That might be an opportunity that's being created by these ground floor units, just to take into consideration as you get into further details of design, doorways, transitionless showers, things along those lines for those units especially. I also agree with Rob about just anything about the green space. I think every effort that can be made would be very important to try to keep upping those percentages. I think it's good what you're already doing, and then I also agree with Doug's comment about the activation of the ground level. So if we're building this to be commercial type real estate, but it's ground level units, some way that still is activating those exterior spaces at the ground level would be the prime concern. Other than that, I think it's generally a pretty attractive looking building. I think it's an appropriate siting.
Great. I just have a couple of things. I don't have a problem with the 5 floors either. I think we're fine there. Just as a point of clarity, the bus stop, there will be a bus stop. We're working on it now in the Transit Commission, and the intent will be to have a bus stop basically virtually across the street. You're going into Owen. If you're taking a left onto Owen off of Monona Drive, we're looking at essentially what would be right in front of the building on your side, and what would be between Monona Hills and Heritage on the north side. So the bus stop would be right there. It wouldn't be all the way out to Monona Drive. Again, I don't have any problem with a 5th floor. I think the parking could be solved with the second phase, as has been pointed out by others. I have to say that I struggle with all the surface parking. Just not a big fan of surface parking, and I think it misses really the opportunity for that center road to be between the two, phase 1 and phase 2, to really be kind of a gathering place, because you've got so many cars there. I like the idea of adding a little more brick if we can. I think that's a real loss. And I say that knowing, I mean, I know it's more expensive, but like, I think we're on round 3 at Yahara Terrace in terms of the siding of that building, when siding has not been well done. And I just, there's just not a building, as I look on the, as I look at the buildings that are on Cottage Grove, where the library was, the apartment buildings over there, and I look at, you know, Yahara Terrace and the other, I mean, just the other buildings that have had just either panels or even Smart Side. I have Smart Side on my house. It's a lot of it. You know, you change colors, but it's still a lot. So I think it would stand the test of time much better if we had a little more brick. And then I do like the idea of some ground level treatment, conceivably walkout for not only ADA, but you know, I think about the Bloom where we approved the small fencing, and I don't think the setback of this building is any smaller than at the Bloom, is it?
I'd just have to check.
Yeah.
It's a lot more, but you just wouldn't be able to do it along the road. There's not room at the ends. In some other areas, there'd be plenty of room for something like that.
Right, and so it just seems like if there were, I mean, it would be another nice kind of way to break up the ground floor walkout apartments, to be able to create kind of a little yard, if you will, like we did at the Bloom, because I think that added considerably in terms of mass of the building. I share Rob's disappointment of letting go of the workforce. I understand that we can't force it on anybody. I would just remind everybody here, but we're not talking about affordable housing, we're talking about workforce housing. And without workforce housing, we don't have teachers and firefighters and other primary service providers that can afford to live in Monona. And that just really saddens me. I mean, the opening salary for a school teacher is not $87,000, you know, it's a lot less than that. It's like $45,000, right? For opening, brand new teacher?
No, 87 would take a lot of years to get even close.
Right, exactly. So, you know, so I do worry about that, and that's a commitment that we have. But overall, I understand the pressures that you guys are under. So I'll leave it at that. Any other, yeah, Susan?
I just wanted, just because public safety was raised, and it was mentioned in our staff report, but nobody mentioned it, that our police chief did not have concerns with the project. And our fire chief actually shared support for it, with the addition of a couple of fire hydrants. So I just think that's worth noting, since they both weighed in positively.
Right. I think it's a good point, Susan. And I would also say that I'm going to go back to something that Patrick said, that our population used to be a lot higher, number one, not smaller. And number two, you know, the reality is no growth isn't an option. I mean, there's just no way for us to stay, unless we all want our taxes to go even higher. It's just, I mean, there's no place else to go. You know, those are our commercial corridors. They're all, you know, largely undervalued. We're making a big difference, I think, by having the density on the commercial corridors. And there's no financial way for Monona to even maintain the police force or the fire force that we have. Just never mind the rest of the city staff. Without some growth and density. Without some growth, and appropriate growth. And that's what this is. So, do you feel like you've gotten enough direction from this group?
Yeah, we appreciate your comments. We will do everything in our power to see, you know, the brick part, stone part would be the last thing we wanted to take off of this building. but it honestly comes down to dollar and cents. I know you feel nothing's changed, but $2 million in costs, doubling interest rates on a mortgage this side will cross your eyes. So the other thing that is also significant, and maybe you can address this, Jeff, I also want to mention, I forgot all about it, I talked to Gary Faboni, who said, I'm sorry I couldn't make this meeting tonight, but would you please tell the folks that I totally support the project. I don't believe we need more retail, we need more customers, we need more rooftops, we don't need more vacant buildings. As it pertains to the existing residents or occupants of the Monona Center, that building is in such miserable condition that I'm embarrassed to say we own it. It's pathetic. And we just throw good money after bad. And quite frankly, the people that are in there are living from, I don't know where they're gonna go either. Because at the rents we're charging, I mean, we're subsidizing them, subsidizing. They're in there at like $9 a square foot and we pay all the utilities. That doesn't exist. So I don't know where they go.
Right.
But it's a reality. And the last comment I have is that when I look at this just from, that gentleman that raised the security issues, safety issues, I agree. It bugs me currently that the cops are over there all the time. And there's $650,000 a year in tax revenue here that isn't being generated. We pay 20. That's a lot of money to leave on the table. And unfortunately, it does boil down to economics. And these are things we just can't control. And we have tried really hard. Jeff, would you address the rental structure quickly?
Well, just with the studios, for example, if we charge $1,200 a month, and you need to make 3 times rent, that's $3,600 a month. For 12 months, that's $43,200 an annual income. Is that considered affordable? I would say so. And you can do the same math with our 1-bedrooms, and you can do the same math with a 2-bedroom if you get a roommate.
Yeah.
So I had a roommate. I didn't buy my first house until I was 35. So,
Hey, I have 4 kids, man.
never had a salary.
You're on your own.
Cheeseburger.
And here we are. So I'm just saying that there's things that people can do to help themselves, and when we can provide a good unit mix, we're going to help them achieve, a nice quality of living and a secure quality of living. I mean, I think in Green Bay in Building 4, I think we have like 40 cameras. I mean, there's not an inch of that place that we can't see from our phone. So,
Like even right now.
yeah.
So it's like, anyway.
So that's all.
And something to keep in mind too, when we're talking about this is, those rental rates that you're talking about right now and how you have them kind of scheduled, those studios will be affordable for somebody that makes $42,000 a year. The more we add to the building, those costs go somewhere, and those costs go directly to the rents.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something to think about when we think about affordable housing.
Well, and I'll tell you our experience with the CDA, I mean, we didn't get anywhere at that time, and then the rates did jump, but, some of the comments were raise your rents. It's like, okay, get more density. Okay, so here we are.
I just want to say one other thing as it relates to the commercial piece. I totally get the commercial piece, but I got to tell you, if I were Favoni's or somebody else on that, or Ken's for that matter, I'd do something to open a real coffee shop, because we may have a plethora of salons and banks in Monona, not to mention vaping stores, as we talked about earlier, but we do not, I mean, if you try to go to Starbucks or True, I'm serious about that. Like, it really shocks me that there's nothing there. I mean, if people want, and with it, given the density of that building, I think that even though it's off Monona Drive, it might have some viability just because it is a commercial neighborhood and you can't get into True or to Starbucks just about any time of day.
I'd like to address that only because we have had a direct request, if we could find a location for someone for a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's what they found, because when we started presenting them, well, if you looked at this, if you looked at that, oh yeah, we can't afford that. And that is the common theme. The one building, I said, what about where David's Jamaica is? Not a chance. The cost of renovation of that building, and they're not doing anything, we had to do it. I said, what about where that yoga studio is?
Right, I was just
Too
gonna say, the
expensive.
yoga studio seems like it would be a sweet little
Oh,
spot.
great.
Well, that's $22 a square foot in rent,
That's a lot.
so, and that's triple net.
So that's just an unfortunate thing that we're all in. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for these guys then? Okay. I hope you got feedback. If you're good, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I want to move to reports of staff and commission members, staff report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just a couple quick updates. CDA tomorrow night, there will be discussion of potential new districts, as well as an informational presentation from the applicant that we just heard from. One of the things to make mention of as well is the CDA, in conjunction with the TIF consultant, are working on some educational materials as it relates to some of the successes, some of the sort of updates, if you will, from our existing districts. It's been nearly a decade since there was last sort of a publication with updates with some of the districts, and of course that would include the riverfront, for example, and some of the metrics from that. So there's some public educational materials that are being worked on there. I think there'll be sort of a deeper dive that probably will involve City Council as well, but there'll also be sort of a shorter, more manageable document as well.
I just have a question about, they had made a comment at the end there where they said they went to CDA and they were told raise rents or increase density. But then if we're on the other end saying we're worried about affordability and density, it's like the city is telling them two different things.
Welcome to our world.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's-
I mean, the balance between Plan Commission and the CDA has always been, it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge. And for precisely that, the push and pull that you just referenced, I mean, CDA's responsibility is to make sure that whatever investments we're making are really smart return for the city. Our responsibility is to make sure whatever development we suggest fits really well within the site and with the zoning and with what we need, and, in alignment with other comprehensive plans and plans that we do, and those don't necessarily, that they're not necessarily simpatico, so it's always.
And I think one of the opportunities seen here was, you could argue tonight, was sort of informational kind of preliminary discussion with Plan Commission, just with the way the timing is, to be able to go tomorrow night and sort of present as well and get a sense from CDA. There'll be I'm not expecting any financial discussion or anything like that, but sort of the applicant to put forward a project that they say, this is viable, this can work, with some level most likely of, city assistance, but really compile all that feedback that they hear from CDA, that they get from Plan Commission. And I think it's inevitable, as there was some discussion tonight about economic factors, whether comments can be made or not, but same with CDA. They often, there's often a comment about architecture, there's something. So I think one of the things from staff level is making sure that everybody, as much as we can, is seeing this at the same time, so that feedback can kind of be compiled, and it really gives the applicant the best information at the same time as well.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else want to comment on that? Yes. I mean, I think it's a pretty standard push and pull, is it not, between the bodies? Yeah. Chris?
Well, really, economics isn't an item we that we
Right.
consider.
Yeah.
We consider what's our zoning ordinance, what districts is in, what fits, our community. We're not supposed to be thinking economics at all. That really is 100% CDA. So
Right.
when we look at, it should have some more masonry, well, that costs money, and then they go to CA and say, the Planning Commission wants me to put on more masonry. You gotta give me money. That's the kind of push and pull you have.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Plus, Chair Stolper had to serve on this commission for 1 year, and he'll never forget that.
Yeah.
What was that?
Stolper served on this
Oh,
for 1 year,
gotcha.
I'll never forget it. Yeah. Okay.
Upcoming items, we do have a busy agenda for the May 13th meeting. The storage proposal is most likely returning for formal consideration, the one at Femrite, corner of Femrite and Cops, as well as a couple other items. The plantings at the school district, that has not been forgotten, that's coming back with updated plans, sort of following on from the parking lot discussion, and so looking at those plantings with the tree islands, and most likely a couple zoning permits and signage applications as well. So if I may kind of jump into that a little bit, just calling out the May 27th meeting. Of course, that's Memorial Day. I have that down as canceled. Whether it's tonight or whether it's by a doodle poll, there may be a discussion about having a sort of alternate date for that meeting. Just I may be looking to move a couple things off May 13th, just to sort of work the agenda. And if we can offer something around 2 weeks later rather than a month later, that might be preferable. So I can certainly follow up with a doodle poll just to understand people's plans and what may work. That's it.
Great. We didn't do anything on diversity, equity, inclusion, or sustainability, but today is Earth Day, for those of you who don't know. And there were numerous things that happened in the city today and over the course of the weekend related to that. Don't think that there's anything else on that front. I just have one other thing that I just wanted to share with folks, and that is that in light of the volume of activity that we continue to have on this committee, and as recognizing the need for a reasonable workload for the staff that we have here, and also the care that frankly I know the city wants to exercise and I want to exercise as it relates to your time. I just wanted to let everybody know that we are reviewing some of the items that seem like with some slight modification that could provide Doug with a few more teeth, although I think he has all his teeth intact, and expedite decision-making a little bit more at the staff level, so that there are things that we don't necessarily have to deal with, and some of those that come up for me, and for, I think, in discussion with city staff include, like the CSM that came up recently, right? I mean, that was a perfect case in point of, like, it was a whole street that had a bunch of really old CSMs that, you know, were that really wasn't about combining two lots. They were just like, and so and we've had a bunch of signs as well, when we have a sign code that I think is really pretty clear. So it's not to say that our director of plan now or in the future would be going rogue, but just would be given a little more, as I said, given a few more teeth. We're looking at how we could do that so that simple permitting, things that we might be able to do that would mean that we wouldn't be chewing up our time as a commission, and certainly items that aren't resolved. You know, I mean, if that Doug can't resolve. Obviously, if somebody's still outside of an ordinance and it can't be resolved at the staff level, then it would still come before us. But we're just we're just starting a discussion around that, and I just wanted everybody to know that. We're just trying to be, like I said, sensitive to people's time and to Doug's and the staff's time, because if you have been to his office lately, you know that. And just even from what he talked about in the next meeting, it's not slowing down any. That's a good thing. You know, we need that activity, but, so I just wanted to let folks know. And whether or not the changes that we're talking about require ordinance changes or not, obviously that's another whole step, but I just want to let you know that we've begun a discussion around that, and maybe, are there some ways that we can streamline things so it takes less time for us, and is still smart decision-making on the city's part. I think that's it, unless anybody else has any questions for us, for any of us. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. All right, then I will be delighted to take a motion, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move adjourn.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or adjourn.